Welcome to How I Travel. I'm Brad Foley with Foley Exploring.
I'm Tim from Timmy's World.
And I'm Reinhard from Perchancetoroam.
Yeah, so welcome, Perchancetoroam. Great to have you on the show, and we'd love to hear about all of your stories from around the world.
Sure.
Um,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, so I was looking at the blog post that you wrote earlier
Okay.
on Tim's blog, and I was really curious about how you, I guess, go about traveling in general, like hitchhiking around the world. And how did you get started, and how do you continue, right? What do you do?
Mhm. Right. So how did I get started with traveling? Well, I guess for me, travel was always part of my life in a way, just because my parents always were, and I mean, in a way still are, very avid travelers themselves. And so ever since I was little, we took all these extended trips through Europe, and later on, when I was a little older, through the rest of the world as well. And I guess these weren't what you would call like family trips, or what you would maybe think of as a family vacation, laying on the beach for a week or something. But they were always very culturally minded trips where we moved from city to city, explored the architecture, getting to know the culture and the history of the places, talking to people, going on hikes. So basically exploring natural and cultural aspects of the places we went to. And so, in a way, I grew up with the notion, you could say, that travel is like an essential part of life. Um, so naturally, when I grew up, I knew I wanted to continue that into my adult life. And so when I moved out from home and started studying, I knew that I always needed to make enough time in between terms to go on trips, at least one big trip a year, but also to have the necessary funds, obviously. And as students don't tend to have a lot of money, I feel like I naturally gravitated towards the budget travel aspect,
Hmm.
which I feel I kind of perfected over the years, at least for myself. I think I found like this sweet spot between saving money on the one hand, but also not missing out on any experiences I want to have on the other hand. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty central to my travel ethos, I think you could say.
Yeah, it sounds like
And
it
So is that
sounds
what
like
sort of led you to the hitchhiking side of things, and just the affordability and stuff like that, and just the sort of the
for
public
instance,
transport and
right, exactly. So, like hitchhiking is usually, I mean, usually I travel to countries that are not too expensive. So I'm not really hitchhiking because I want to save money. But I mean, occasionally you go places where there's not a bus, or the bus is not coming, or it broke down, or there's some reason you can't go anywhere by public transport. And then hitchhiking is the way to go for me. And especially in countries where not a lot of people have cars, and you usually do use a lot of public transports, then like the people who do have cars, they're very likely to take you along, we found. So in a lot of countries, we didn't have to wait a long time for hitchhiking. We just stood by the side of the road for like 5 minutes, and usually the first or the second car that passes you is actually taking you along, which is amazing.
wow.
So yeah, that's more of
is
a
it nerve-wracking though?
I
You're in
mean,
a country that's probably, I don't know, might have a high crime rate, or it's poor, or and you just stood there and somebody pulls up and you get in. It's like,
Jump in.
yeah, I mean, it's always like, of course, hitchhiking has a bad reputation and has had it for a long time, I assume. So there's always this factor of like dangerous situations about it. But I don't like. I've never been in a sketchy situation. I mean, I have to say, of course, I'm a guy, so it might be different for women travelers, obviously. Um, but for me, I mean, once in a while you meet someone where you say, okay, he's a bit of a nutbag, But I've never been in any situation where I say, okay, this guy is gonna rob me or like worse, So no, I'm not worried at all about that. And I mean, you take a look at the people too, like when you're going. I feel like I have a pretty good Like I can judge the character of the people pretty well. So I've never been in a sketchy situation there. So nerve-wracking, no, I wouldn't say so. Sometimes like people are driving like crazy. That's nerve-wracking, especially if you're sitting in the back of a pickup truck or something, or you're hitchhiking on a motorcycle, which I've done a few times, and people have their helmets on, and I'm sitting in the back without a helmet, and they're going like, I don't know, 80 kilometers an hour through the town, and I'm just okay. Maybe you could slow down a little bit. So that's nerve-wracking, yeah.
Yeah, I'd imagine that
Yeah,
you
no,
meet so many cool people when you're hitchhiking too. I mean, I bet you get
yeah.
very local cultures. You get to know all the best places to eat in the world.
Mhm.
Do you have any experiences that come to mind? Like you got on somebody's car and they were like, "No, come stay with me, and now we'll cook you a home cooked meal or something like that."
Yeah, I mean, I think I've never been like invited to a home by someone who I was hitchhiking with, but it happened once in a while that like we just stopped at a roadside like restaurant, and then we had some meal, or like they stopped at a friend's place, for instance. I mean, it's sometimes it's very funny. Like one time, this guy was driving me around on Dominica, this Caribbean island, and after a while I realized he's like a little tipsy, and I mean, not it's not that bad because the roads, like the few roads that this island has, they're pretty, like the shape is pretty well, and there's not a lot of traffic going on. So I was like, well, it's all right, I guess. But then we stopped at a roadside bar, and that guy, he was like, okay, let's have a few drinks, and then he started like just doing, I
Oh my
mean, like basically shots. I was like, are you sure you're gonna be all right to drive after that? Like within 5 minutes, that guy like drank 3 shots with a friend who was working there and a beer, and then he took a beer, and then okay, let's get back in the car. And I was like, maybe I'm gonna walk from here on out. But then we were like basically in the middle of nowhere, so I continued driving with him. So
Wow, that's
yeah,
amazing.
stuff like that happens. But I mean, yeah, you get to talk to a lot of different people, and that's one of the aspects like I love about budget travel, which isn't just about money, that you get to know so many different locals, and you hear all those different stories, and they tell you a little bit about their life, and you get to like have a little glimpse inside their daily life. Um, Sometimes it's hard to make conversation though, because I just remember one guy who was speaking a very heavy patois, which also was on Dominica actually, and he was like constantly talking to me, and I did not understand him at all. And, like the first few times, I was like, "Sorry, come again," and then like at some point, I felt bad, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure, yeah, I agree." Yeah, like the conversation aspect always obviously depends on where you're going, and if people are speaking English, or if you have to try and make conversation in a different language and everything. But yeah,
Yeah.
it really, really gives you a good glimpse into like people's lives, I
I
feel.
think the language barrier can sometimes make it more interesting and more fun, and you can sometimes perhaps even sort of connect with somebody a bit better because there is that break in the language, and there's more of a fun conversation when you're trying to work out what each other's saying. It's so easy now to walk around with Google Translate.
Yeah,
The things that I think that having that conversation in the broken languages is sometimes a lot more fun.
it's true. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like a lot of people also respect if you try to speak a little bit of the language. Like even if you just, I always try when I'm going somewhere new to at least learn like 50 words in the local language, and like maybe 5 or 6 sentences, like stuff you need a lot. Like one of the first sentences I always learn is, do you speak English, for instance? And I mean, even if people don't, they see that you try to ask them in the native language, and they respect that. They say, okay, this guy is making an effort, so I'm gonna make an effort, and we're gonna try to have a conversation, even though we maybe don't like understand everything the other one is saying, but at least like it shows that you have like a respect, and you're not going there like speaking English right away to them. So I feel
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
pretty important. Yeah, but I agree. Like sometimes it's very funny what happens if you try to like have a conversation in a language you don't really speak, and then you basically just try to talk about the most basic stuff, but it works. I mean, and a lot of
yeah.
it can be done with like just gestures and mimics and everything. So yeah, you
Yeah.
always understand each other in a way.
Get there in
Yeah,
the
I
end,
think
don't you?
as an American, I understand that we generally are loud across the world too, and we don't really try as a general to like talk with the rest of the world. So I think it's a really important lesson for any Americans that are traveling. Like, go ahead and get out there, but like respect that culture, and really try to
Exactly. Yeah.
get out there, learn the language, talk to the people, and really understand exactly what they're trying to get across to you as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think it's about being open, like just being open to other cultures and not necessarily worrying about doing everything right, because you're gonna make mistakes naturally if your culture is very different from the place you're traveling to. I mean, that can't be avoided, but just like trying to respect people's culture, like this goes a long way. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I've been meaning to ask, where are you at in the world right now?
So I'm in Leipzig, in Eastern Germany, which is where I live. So where
Cool.
I spend most of my time when I'm not traveling. So yeah, back home, like Leipzig is about 150 kilometers southwest of Berlin,
Hmm.
and it's well, we've got about 600,000 inhabitants, so it's the biggest city apart from Berlin in the eastern part of Germany, so
Cool.
central area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
When are you next going traveling, exploring again, and where are you going?
So that kind of depends. At the moment, I'm trying to finish my PhD, and I hope I'll be done with that sometime in the winter. But it really depends on when like the defenses and everything. So once I've got done, like this whole part of like my PhD is out of the way, then I was thinking of traveling for a couple of months. But the destination would depend on what time of year it is, obviously. So
Yeah,
I was thinking if it was in the winter, I would love to go to West Africa, which is still pretty much like an empty spot on my personal travel map. I haven't been to any Western African countries so far. So I was thinking maybe doing like Ghana, Togo, Benin, like in about 3 months. So about 1 month for every country. I'm a big fan
nice.
of slow travel, so
Cool.
I wouldn't try to fit in like 10 countries in that time, but I would really try to see the countries I went to. If it was in the summer, I was thinking of northern India, maybe. You have this Ladakh and Leh regions, which is like the northernmost states in India, on the border to China, and
Mm.
like on the other side, just Pakistan, but then you have Kashmir there. So I was thinking like going to the eastern part where you have the foothills of um, the Himalayas and the Tian Shan range, and the landscape just looks absolutely
Yeah,
stunning. And you can do all those like multi-day treks there, like 7, 8, 9 day treks through beautiful landscapes where you don't even have to carry a tent because there's all those homestays along the way. So you could sleep in people's houses, and yeah, I would love to do that. I haven't done a long trek in a long while, so
Yeah,
that'd
that
be
sounds
like my
crazy to
two
say.
options. Yeah,
That's
I mean, like I'd love to do it. Yeah. But I have
cool.
no concrete plans at the moment.
it's, I
It's just
think
like I
concrete
want
plans
to
can
go.
be a bit, they change. Plans change a lot, don't they? So I think having that
Exactly.
flexibility is
Yeah.
quite, important to bear in mind.
I think the
I really
slow
wanted
travel
to.
is
True.
important too, because
Yeah,
going
yeah,
slowly,
yeah.
you can really, take the best use of all the deals that are out there too. Hitchhiking's a good
Hmm.
example this time, but maybe they're running a deal on a flight or you're running a deal on buses or something like that. So if you're flexible with
Hmm.
time, to your point, you can always take more time and less money, or more money and less time to get somewhere. So those two seem to kind of trade off pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like you. I mean, sometimes you just want to stay in a place a little longer because it's just like you really like it. And if you have a too rigid of a plan and you say, okay, I'm gonna move on to the next country now, then you're probably gonna leave before having explored everything you wanted to see.
Yeah.
And I also don't want to spend all my time like traveling around, like I mean just in buses or in trains or whatever, but I want to actually see the places I'm going to. And so I usually, like, if I have the decision to like see a lot of countries or even like one bigger country, I prefer to just pick a region and just explore the region of the country. Like we did that in India, for instance. I mean, India is a huge country with a lot of different like regions and cultures, you know, and we just decided to explore the Rajasthan region in the northwest for 4 weeks.
Nice.
And I didn't feel like we were bored or anything. I mean, there's so much to see in this tiny region of India alone. So if you would have said, okay, we're gonna go there, and then we're gonna go to the southern tip, and we're gonna go to the eastern highlands and to the Himalaya in the north, then like we wouldn't have enjoyed it because all our time would have been spent in trains, you know. So that's one of the things I really like about slow travel, and I just like getting a feeling for a place and just not necessarily only checking off sites from a list, but to just get a sense of how people are living there and what's the daily life like.
Yeah. What's been sort of the most eye-opening culture or place or experience that you've had while you've been traveling? What's the thing that sort of really sticks with you that might have even changed your life a little bit, or the way you think about things? Has there been anything that really sort of, one particular moment where you just thought, wow,
Right.
like, oh my God, or
I mean, it's usually I can't really think of one moment right now because it's like something like that happens to you almost like every day when you're traveling, I feel, but not in a big way, not a big kind of epiphany or anything, but just like small things where you see, okay, on the one hand, the cultures are very different from like my own culture or from what I grew up with, but on the other hand, basically everyone's the same around the world. Like everyone wants the same things in a way. Like they all just want to be happy, you know. And I think it's just seeing like, okay, there's like on the surface you have all those differences which set people apart from each other, but like underneath everyone's still somewhere like the core of a person is just a human being, you know. So I can't really say like one situation where I thought, okay, this is absolutely eye-opening to me, but I feel like all of my travels are like constantly eye-opening to me in a way, and I absolutely loved it too, like to be in like new situations every day and be confronted by something I don't know every day, and just like to, well, for one to have adapt to a new situation constantly. I think that's quite interesting, but also like just being confronted with stuff I don't know. Like the worst thing for me is just being stuck in a routine where I do the same thing every day and where I know exactly what's gonna happen. Like that's hell for me. And some people love that. Some people need their routine and they want to do exactly the same thing every morning. And I don't want to do that, you know. So yeah, just having those different experiences like each day, I think that's much more important to me than like that one mind-blowing thing. But maybe I think of something later on, or maybe something like that will happen to me at some point where I was just like completely, okay, I've never expected that. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are coming up on time here, guys. So I think it's a good place to wrap it up. I do want to say thank you again for coming out and being on the stream with us. If
Yeah,
anybody
thank you.
else out there would like to come on the stream, feel free to reach out to any of us here. Well, at least me and Tim. I don't know if Reiner would forward a message or not, but
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely, yeah.
yeah. So thanks for coming. Hope everybody had a blast, and look out for episode number 3. It's coming shortly.
Really interesting. Thank you, and we'll see you around.
All right, yeah. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you guys.